to Calling All Stations, the transport podcast. I'm Christian Walmart, an author and journalist who has covered transport for the past 30 years. In every episode, we try to keep you up to date with the most engaging news stories, policy developments, and interviews in the transport world. And with me is my regular co-presenter, Mark Walker, who has spent decades looking at transport policies and legislation. So, Mark, what are we covering today?
Hello, Christian, and hello to our listeners. In this episode, we'll be updating listeners on the UK government's priorities for investment in transport projects, which have been clarified since an earlier episode when we touched on the headline figures. You've also been travelling once again, this time to Germany, to learn some more about the potential of driverless cars. We'll also be looking back on the first year of the UK Labour government in office and giving them a bit of a scorecard for their achievements and less so on the transport field.
So, Mark, yes, thank you for that. You've actually been looking at what projects the Department for Transport and ministers have put forward and looked at the detail of their plans. What's the headlines on that?
Well, just to recap for loyal listeners, I think it was 2 episodes ago that we reported on the outcome of the Chancellor's spending review for UK government expenditure over the next period, and the headlines that had been revealed through that process for transport expenditure, the overall amount of money involved, and certain major projects that had been picked out. We subsequently had announcements of a 10-year infrastructure plan, which again largely dealt in headlines, and a bit more clarity about expenditure on HS2. But this, to complete the story, was an announcement made by the Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander on the 8th of July to Parliament, which published over 50 road and rail schemes reported to be upgrades, which were, as ever, joined to telephone number long figures for what these projects would produce, supposedly in outputs. You'll laugh, Christian, but this time it was over 39,000 new homes and 42,000 jobs were attributed to these projects. So
yes, these figures are always nonsense. They just make no sense whatsoever. No self-respecting economist or even journalist should ever repeat them. But I presume, Mark, there's the usual mishmash of schemes that have been rehashed and re-announced, and bits of schemes that are re-announced, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to try to navigate through that over the next couple of minutes, because of the over 50 schemes, some 33 were actually road schemes, road projects, road enhancements, new stretches of road, many of which had been in the pipeline for years, in some cases probably decades, which the government chose to proceed with. Now, listeners will recall that in the early days of the Labour government, some road schemes were being cancelled as the preponderance of Labour thinking seemed to be towards public transport investment. But
they did Stonehenge, didn't they?
Stonehenge, that's right, and Arundel were notably cancelled.
The Arundel bypass.
The Arundel bypass in the earliest weeks of the Labour government. Since then, the government's rhetoric around the need for growth has become linked, it seems, inexorably with the belief that roads generate growth, hence those extraordinary numbers of claimed houses and jobs. So 33 road schemes were actually given the go-ahead in the statement of the 8th of July. And there, in many cases, probably in every case, this was a new announcement. This was a new road with new money.
My gosh!
So for those people that, should we say, are sceptical about the ability of roads to generate economic growth, and who see roads as just new roads as really just generating more traffic through the phenomenon of induced demand, which has been acknowledged for several decades.
For 40 years, I've been writing about that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's quite a lot of disappointment that that so many road schemes have been authorised and actually funded now by the Labour government. And as the headlines suggested, this is partly because they believe in these schemes on their own merits, and partly because they've attached them to their objective of achieving substantial housing growth over the lifetime of this parliament, with, of course, a target of 1.5 million new homes.
So this will leave them open to attack from the Greens, of course. But surely there must be some good news in it for the railways or for
There were, well,
sustainable transport.
yeah, I should say that not every road scheme got through that assessment. So two road schemes were cancelled: the A12 widening in Essex and the A47 widening not far from me, just to the west of Peterborough. But I should also say, there are still another load of road schemes under consideration as well that may yet emerge through the a future sort of review process.
Well,
When it
Richie Sunak had a 27 billion pound roads program. So do we have any idea how much of that is left, or is that? I mean, that's again a nonsense figure, isn't it?
it is, and what we don't yet know, hasn't been revealed, the detailed sort of cost benefit analyses and costings for all of these schemes. Talking of Rishi Sunak, one of the roads that was approved was the A66 dualling in the north of England, which directly, I believe, serves Rishi Sunak's constituency, and that he's continued to advocate for from the backbenches. But come to answer your question, Christian, about was there any news in there for public transport? Now, obviously, to be fair and balanced, we had seen earlier this year the announcement of a lot of money for city region public transport improvements. So
Yeah.
trams, some heavy rail improvements, and some bus schemes being taken forward. But for this particular announcement on the 8th of July, sadly, most of the rail schemes that were announced were re-announcements, as you rightly foresaw. So, for example, the Transpennine route upgrade, which has been ongoing for years and which has been reauthorized and financed by even this government a couple of times during its first year of office, was listed. East West Rail, the new rail schemes, very welcome new rail schemes for Wales, but that were announced at the time of the Chancellor's spending review. These were some of the things that were re-announced on the 8th of July. Notably, there was the reinstatement of the railway line to Portishead, near Bristol,
Bristol.
outside Bristol, which is very welcome, and which was the headline really that was attached to this announcement. The new station at Wellington and another one at Columpton in the west of England, and Haxby near York. But in terms of but then they re-announced Cambridge South, which is just about ready to open. I mean, it's you can go through it and see that that it's literally sort of finished. So that was, I think, a bit of sleight of hand there, shall we say? So there were these re-announcements, but then there were some real serious disappointments on the rail infrastructure side. So, for example, the completion of electrification of the Midland Main Line, which has so far reached a place called Wigston, I believe, just south of Leicester. Now, there was tremendous pressure for that project to be completed all the way through to Leicester itself, then on to Derby, Nottingham, and Sheffield. Now
Yes, I mean, it's a
that,
bit useless kind of stopping in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? Because you can't put
well,
electric trains on.
well, this is so. Anyway, just to say that they've paused this. They've paused it. That's the
Right.
expression, not cancelled, but paused. But the argument that's used by the government in defence is that East Midlands Railway is currently taking delivery of some bi-mode trains, so that operate either under the electric wires where they exist or on diesel power for the rest of the route. And the argument has been advanced that somehow these new trains, because they're so efficient, have reduced the business case argument for full electrification all the way to Derby, Nottingham, and Sheffield. Now, you work that one out if you can, but you know, I struggle
No, I
with
think
that
I think
logic.
that's an American expression which is shortened as BS.
Yes,
I think applies here.
yeah.
But I think more widely, it is disappointing. But we're going to come back to this subject at the end about the overall Labour policy, and we'll cover that later. But it is all a bit of a mishmash, isn't it?
Yes, and at least electrification north of Wigston got a mention in the document, whereas there are some schemes that were simply not mentioned at all. And the members of the House of Commons had to sort of jump up and say, well, what's the status of this scheme, Secretary of State? And similar things happened when the announcement was made in the House of Lords as well. So notably, the very important rail capacity improvements at Ely and Hawley in the east of England, which are seen as essential for the growth of rail freight, which the UK government says that it supports, weren't even mentioned. I mean, they're so far down the list of priorities that they didn't even get listed as being paused. So they've not even got off the launch pad effectively. And then there was, but another one that was actually mentioned, but was a cause of great concern, was the Southwest Rail Resilience Programme. So people will recall, people that know their rail network will know that Dawlish in Devon is a very important strategic location where the mainline Great Western Railway runs practically along the beach and
It
is
does.
very
It's a lovely view,
very
but
vulnerable to weather events and to the effects of climate change. And that programme, the final phase of that resilience programme to protect the railway there, hasn't been deemed worthy of continuation. And then, kind of at the other extreme, Peckham Rye Station in southeast London, which is one of the busiest interchange stations I understand on the railway network anywhere, has lost its funding. So this is one of those things where you think, well, this something like this generates revenue because it makes it easier for people in a densely populated area to use the rail system, but that one isn't worthy
yes, I happen
of
to
further
know that
funding.
station, and it's very old and a bit of a mess with a sort of rather dark entrance to it. Yeah, typical sort of station you don't really feel like you want to use.
Yeah. So of course, as it happened, the just shortly after the announcement, the House of Commons Transport Committee had a hearing with the Rail Minister, Lord Hendy, who's also the Transport Minister for everything in the House of Lords, and asked him about some of these decisions and some of these priorities. And he said that, well, there simply isn't enough money and that tough decisions needed to be taken. I'm paraphrasing here, but some tough decisions needed to be taken, and they've gone for the ones that can have the best return, but also the best potential to generate growth, jobs, and housing. And that to govern is to choose, and these are the choices that have been made. But I think that people thinking about the Labour ethos, you can't help but recall that when they're in opposition, the Labour Party are always the most pro public transport, pro rail people. And I'm talking about going right back to the 60s here. And then when they get into power, they seem to get captured by the road lobby pretty quickly. And we saw this in the 60s, we saw it in the 70s, we saw it in the turn of the century with the Blair Brown government, and now we seem to be seeing it again, but even more rapidly, in that it's only taken a year for them to become pretty committed road builders, contrary to what we might have expected to see.
Yes, I thought certainly when they were in opposition, I thought this huge roads budget would be a source of potential funds to pay for other things, and that they would then transfer money away from roads into other parts of the transport budget. But I suppose they might argue they're doing that with HS2, which absorbs a cool 7 billion a year over the next few years, and that's about a third of the whole transport investment
They
budget.
do say exactly that, Christian. In fact, yeah. Right. To justify the expenditure on the other road schemes. Yes, they do make that point. And to be fair, it has some validity in terms of the sheer quantum of cash which is having to be pumped into HS2 to get it anything like ready to open. Christian is a well-known skeptic when it comes to the potential of driverless cars or autonomous vehicles more generally. But just to prove how open-minded he is, Christian recently visited Stuttgart as a guest of the Bosch company, which is developing the technology for installation on driverless and autonomous vehicles of the future. Here's his report.
Bosch is particularly focused on using AI to develop software for driverless cars, or for what they call ADAS, driver aids.
This is the Volkswagen ID bus.
A Volkswagen ID bus, right.
And there are two demos for the vehicle, but we are using this cube for this demo, right? On this Qualcomm cube runs the Gen AI model, right? Which is vision language action model. So it is like a ADAS GPT, right? Like ChatGPT for ADAS, right? And we have shrinked it down onto this embedded device so that it can run there like on a smartphone without cloud connection, right?
So this would be in the car somewhere.
Exactly.
You would build it into the car.
Exactly,
somewhere.
exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yes. And it would be way smaller than that. So
And that's right. It would be smaller than that.
Yeah.
Oh, really? It would be what?
Yes.
Because that's about 10 centimeters cube, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but because this is a development system, the chip which is built in is the same as a Samsung S24 chip, right? So it can be very small, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And the rest I can explain you why we drive, if you don't mind. I just wanted to show you once the hard way.
Right. Okay.
Right? Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay.
So we took to the crowded Stuttgart roads to see how AI, or large language models, were being used to help navigation, and in particular, how information would be relayed by instant text messages to the driver.
So then we have 3 seats of a video system with a language model, right? So this is the language model has been shrink down and made small enough to fit on this embedded hardware. That is number 1. And the number 2 is we have connected a vision system which captures the information here from this front camera. This is what the car sees.
Right.
And we translate that visual information into the text domain. And in the text domain, we can use the full power of large language models to do a reasoning about the traffic situation. So I give you an example. It is, for instance, if a ball rolls over the street, then a natural human behavior would be to reason that if there's a ball, maybe there's a child nearby, to chase the ball, right?
Yes.
And this kind of reasoning is now possible also with our system, right? Before you would, in the classic AI world, you would need tons of training data, to specifically train the system to cope with that situation. But now with leveraging the power of all text data which is available, that system behavior can be trained by just giving the system to train using text data, right? So language models are able to behave more using common sense, if you want, right? So
when you say text models, what do you mean? I mean, you can write them instructions.
Yeah, it's a little bit like ChatGPT, if you want, right?
Okay.
So but standard language models or LLMs, they consume text input,
Right.
like the prompts.
Right.
Then they do something with it, right, and generate a text output, right? And our system consumes video input. Then we have a translator from video input into the text domain. Mm-hmm. Then the reasoning happens to generate a trajectory. So at the end of the day, the question we are asking here is more or less the same always, like, please describe the scene, and what do you recommend to do? Like accelerate, decelerate, turn left, turn right. Yeah, because this is the action that.
Yeah. So this is a Cherry.
It's a Cherry car.
Yeah.
It's the Exceed brand of Cherry. It's one of their premium car lines. With two models of Exceed, we have been in series since 2023. Starting initially as a highway ramp-to-ramp assist, and then extending the functionality via over-the-air updates to a full urban address-to-address.
So initially it was only on highways.
Exactly.
Right.
In 23 it was on highways, and then we extended it to full urban address-to-address driving. What you see today is already our next generation, which goes into SOP this autumn.
SOP.
Start of production.
Right.
So it goes into series. It goes live in this autumn. And this is based on an end-to-end AI solution.
Okay. So what capability does this car have? It's level 2. So what does it do?
Yeah. So basically, you can, as an end customer, enter a navigation target. And the system can deal with everything in between. It can bring you from your start point to the navigation target, handling with all traffic situations encountered. Of course, it's a level 2 system, so the driver stays in control, has to monitor the situation at all times, and has to keep the hands on the steering wheel.
Right,
So
but he's not actually controlling the steering wheel.
No. The steering wheel is controlled by the car.
Right.
Here we have to override the system because we have to shorten the route a bit from what we initially planned. We just have to override the navigation system because it wants to turn left, and we have to go straight to make a shortcut.
Okay.
And then as soon as the navigation is recalculated, we can.
But so it would drive itself from point to point. It would drive itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. But it's level 2, so it requires an operator.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
To stay awake.
Exactly. Not only to stay awake, but also to stay always attentive.
Right.
So the driver stays in control here all the time. So he is the one, in the end, ultimately responsible for monitoring the traffic and also deciding when he has to take over control.
Right.
So
and it's slowing down by itself.
Exactly.
Now the system is activated again.
Yeah. You can see here that Stefan, because he's a trained safety driver, can leave a small gap to the steering wheel, so you can really see that the system is operating on its own. We have to go left here.
Yes, I know. Maybe the system wants to do it later on. I will just override.
So you can see from the navigation that basically it wants to stay straight.
Yeah.
This is really just.
You're right.
Why did it want to do that?
It would be possible. You
So
would then
I
go-
did live in this area, and I'm pretty sure that the street down there is a
You would go uphill instead of into the tunnel.
okay. Maybe it would have worked. I'm not sure about it. We are on the safe side if we turn left here.
Yes.
Okay.
So this has nothing to do with our
System.
assistant system.
This is your
really
navigation
the navigation
skills.
engine. So
Right.
this is in this case provided by here. So for Europe we adapted our system to here navigation maps. In China we use AMAP as our map provider.
You use a map. Right.
AMAP, yes,
Right.
which is a Chinese map provider.
Oh, right. So you fit the Bosch system in China, do you? I mean, that's they use your system, do they?
Yes.
Yes.
So yes, exactly. So this car line, and there's a second car line by the Exceed brand. They are fitted with exactly this system in China.
Right.
And it now wants
So
to
the
go back to
the navigation
Is there
made it more
a
complicated.
waypoint left at some
Right.
point?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
no,
No, but
no,
now
it's
we're
back.
back. Okay.
So the navigation told you to
Go straight.
go
yes.
straight and then do a U-turn.
Yes.
Instead of just turning right.
Exactly.
Why did it do that?
That is.
Right.
Unfortunately.
So whose navigation system is this?
It's here.
It's Bosch's.
No, it's here.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So basically, there's of course a few vendors. TomTom here. We decided to use here.
Yeah,
So
they
the
will
cars-
also slow down here a bit because you can't really see Stuttgart Street.
It can't really.
You can't see around the corner.
Okay.
So you need to slow down.
So the car's going extra slow because it's in an area with lots of pedestrians and
Exactly.
cyclists. Do you think it's going slower than you would drive?
I think in these conditions,
Yeah.
I would drive similarly to the car.
Right,
to be
you
honest.
drive the same, right?
Yeah. Also because we have this situation with a lot of very harsh shadows, so it's quite some challenge visually to see some stuff
Yeah.
inside the shadows. So
And there's nothing to indicate externally that this car is a level 2 car and driving itself.
well, there is of course our measurement lidar on top,
Oh, right.
which is kind of a giveaway that
Oh,
this is a
okay.
development car.
Right,
But apart from that, no.
right. So this is fitted with LiDAR and lots of sensors?
So actually, not really.
Oh.
So it's 11 cameras,
Right.
which is kind of a standard setup.
Yeah.
5 radars.
Right.
That big lidar on top is just for the development car, so that is
Okay.
not in series. You will still see a small lidar which looks like a London cab
Right.
taxi sign in
Yeah.
the front. That is not used by the software anymore. So we needed it for our first iterations, and as our software got better and better, now the lidar is not used anymore.
Right.
So it's of course still equipped with a lidar, but currently basically it's 11 camera and 5 radar.
So no sensors? No sensors? No.
Well, cameras are sensors.
Oh, yeah,
so,
right,
yeah.
right. Okay.
So yes, cameras and radars are sensors.
So the car's going around a tricky little area with corners. There's a rather narrow street and it's going up a hill and it's accelerating to get up the hill and then stop at a traffic jam. And the traffic lights just went yellow and the car obeyed it and stopped at the red.
They don't exist in China.
They don't have roundabouts in China, so
They don't have-
the car had never seen a roundabout.
Exactly.
Right.
And that was one of the first things that we basically targeted here for our data collection.
Right.
Added data for that, and also taught the system to be able to handle roundabouts. And those learnings, seeing what works out of the box, where does so now we have an interesting nudging scenario. Has to identify.
Now?
No, will
I
it?
think it
Right,
would
so
not.
we're now stuck behind
Yeah, give it
a
a
car with
second.
flashing lights. So will it overtake the car? Or will it get
Doesn't
just
seem so.
stuck?
There's not so much space in front of the car,
Yeah.
and it's still red. So considering the red traffic light, we couldn't really move.
Well, this is quite exciting.
Give it a second until it turns green at least.
There's no traffic behind us. Okay, we go.
And then they're moving.
So this was quite interesting because basically the car has to decide, is this a parked car or is
Yeah.
it waiting for something?
Yeah.
And in combination with the red traffic light, it looked more likely to be a car waiting for a green traffic light.
Right. So it
than
didn't
a
try
parked
to
car.
overtake it,
Exactly.
which was probably the right decision.
Would have been interesting to see what had happened once the traffic light turned green.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame that the car moved off.
Yes.
But he had his flashes on.
Yes.
And does the car recognise flashes? I presume they're emergency flashes.
Yes.
Yes. So there's an ambulance flashing, but we're going past it. The ambulance is parked.
And the gentleman?
And,
What does it do?
and
Oh,
what, the guy tried to stop. He tried to stop the car and it didn't stop. Right.
He tried to stop him.
It did try to
down.
stop the car, but it didn't really see him, did it?
We did slow down.
It did slow down, but it didn't stop. And the hand waving gesture was confusing. Yes. Did he want us to stop or not?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Right. Okay. The car is staying quite far away from the car in front. Why is that? I mean, it's a few meters more than you would expect.
Yes. I cannot really take an educated guess on why
Right,
it's
right.
doing that.
Right.
Besides then saying probably a lot of drivers in the training data
I'll do that.
had a similar behavior.
As we touched upon earlier in this episode, it's 1 year since the election of the Labour government in the United Kingdom. And over that period, we've covered in some detail their policy initiatives and investment decisions on transport. Now, Christian, you've been trying to assess them in terms of a kind of a scorecard, haven't you?
I have, and I've written a piece for the current issue of Rail magazine, setting out some pluses and minuses, setting out some of the positive things they've done and some of the negatives. And I put that in a slightly wider concept because a few years ago I wrote a book which was called Are Trams Socialist? And it wasn't really about either trams or socialism, but it was about the fact that I thought there'd never really been a coherent transport policy. In other words, that no government had ever sat down and said, right, this is what we need to do in transport for the next 25 years. Here's what we should prioritize. Here's what we should not prioritize. And these are the policy implications of that. And I must say, this still holds good for the first year of the Labour government. And, they've done some good things, but let's start with some of the bad things that I list. And I suppose that I think the worst is, as we were touching upon earlier, is their decision really to go with the roads lobby and kind of support schemes like the Lower Thames Crossing, which not only are going to cost upwards of 9 billion, but will also not really do anything very much for sorting out the transport problems in that area when there are big or good alternatives that could be made and which would result in investment in local railways and such. And add to that also their support for Heathrow, third runway, and expansion of Luton and Gatwick airports. And that makes no sense whatsoever in any terms. It certainly makes no sense in terms of a sustainable transport policy. but it doesn't make sense in an economic one. It's been put forward as, oh, this shows we're ready for growth and we want kind of these planes to be flying in and out. But actually, as when I was opposed to the earlier plans for the third runway, I discovered that many of the new planes that are going to be flying in are not kind of taking businessmen to Wuhan, which is what they kind of put out this idea, but really just people on stag nights to Estonia on EasyJet. I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, and is really disappointing. And then they justify that by saying there's going to be sustainable aviation fuel. Now, we've done that on our podcast, and it's completely ludicrous. There's been one flight over the Atlantic with some reused chip oil or whatever, but it just there is no such thing as sustainable aviation fuel, and they should really get real about that. And then just to finalize with the bad news, there's the fact that, again, something we've discussed, that they've left HS2 hanging about at a place called Handsacre Junction. They're going to spend all the money for the trains heading north of Birmingham to rejoin the overcrowded West Coast main line, when in fact, if you're going to spend this money on HS2, and I've argued that you probably have to now that it's kind of half built, you might as well build a railway that then connects with the north and boost the capacity on this very overstretched part of the line. And yet they've done nothing to indicate that they're going to do anything about it. So we're going to be left with what I've called the Acton to Aston shuttle. Now, I happened to bump into Keir Starmer the other day and asked him about, how are you going to get through to Euston? It goes through your constituency, are you kind of deal with that? And he told me that, it's all in control. We know what we need to do and so on. But I remain unconvinced. The tunnel boring machines are stuck underneath somewhere near Old Oak Common. There's no money for them to drive through to Euston at the moment. And even if there were, it's going to be years and years of chaos at Euston. There's no clear plan of what's going to be built there. So I think that's all part of the bad news, and deal with the infrastructure. And we all know that's the best way to run a railway. And they did pass legislation very quickly to enable lines to be taken over. And we've already seen Southwest Trains taken over, or Southwestern Trains as it was, and now C2C has just been taken over, and they got a program to take over the rest of the network. So that's coherent, although we'd like to see the full legislation, but that's due to come out quite soon, hopefully in October, but we would like to be able to discuss the detail of that, but that's definitely good news. And secondly, there's also good news on the buses front, that they've not only encouraging the franchising system for buses that has been very successful in Manchester, but they've also kept the idea of a maximum fare cap. Unfortunately, they put that up to £3 rather than £2, but nevertheless, that is good news, as is the promised big investment, which you mentioned earlier, about urban mass transit in the city regions. And that's again encouraging. That, at least in that respect, they seem to understand that public transport is a real engine of growth, which they don't seem to understand overall. They seem to be thinking that roads are elsewhere a good idea, but in these big urban areas, public transit is a good idea. So that as well is quite positive. And of course, we've had some successes. The railways are definitely functioning better. They've brought in lots of extra revenue, I hear, from the Office of Road and Rail. And that's partly thanks to the fact that Louise Haigh, I think our sadly missed Transport Secretary, did sort out the dispute with the unions very quickly, and therefore that there has now been much improved reliability, and therefore people have noticed that. So there are those aspects of good news, but as I have to say, overall, there is no transport policy. There's a bunch of measures here and there, some good, some bad, but there's no notion that we know what transport is for, what transport policy should be, what we should be doing in 10 or 15 years' time. There's absolutely no kind of coherent plan.
And indeed, as we've mentioned in previous episodes of this podcast, we are eagerly awaiting the integrated national transport strategy for England, on which there was a consultation that took place earlier this year. As we speak, the House of Commons has just finished for the summer recess, so it seems unlikely that that's going to be seen now until the autumn. But we've also described that as really being the horse that should be in front of the cart. And so many of these decisions have been taken in the absence, as you say, Christian, of an integrated national transport strategy and any real assessment of how the various transport modes fit together.
Yes. And I don't really see that as changing. I mean, the integrated plan is all very well, but I don't think it's what's needed. What is really needed is a long-term kind of transport is such a long-term issue, a long-term vision of how we can deliver sustainable transport, how we can deliver net zero, and how we can put that in a context that includes motor cars, trains, buses, aviation, and so on. And there's no sign of that. But hey, maybe if they did that, we'd have nothing to report on for our podcast.
And we've still got another, perhaps as long as 4 years to go. So we'll see what else emerges later this year and onwards from there. Here's Christian's final thought from the Departure Lounge.
Well, on the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd of August, and indeed the Friday as well, there is the great gathering, which is taking place in Derby at the Alstom works there. And they're not only pulling together lots of trains from the various ages of the railway, but it's an enormous celebration of the 200th anniversary of the opening of the Stockton and Darlington, which actually wasn't till the September, but anyway, it's obviously a better time to have it. And this has attracted huge numbers of people. I think there's 20,000 people. They sold every ticket almost within days. And I bumped into several people who haven't been able to get tickets and are most disappointed. And I think it's a great celebration of the railway. And I will be giving a talk on August the 3rd, the Sunday, in the afternoon, about 200 years of railway history. So do come along if you've got a ticket already, or just hopefully you'll be able to take part in further celebrations of the 200th anniversary, which of course are being held in Darlington in September.
Calling All Stations, the Transport Podcast with Christian Walmart, is produced by Cogitamus Limited, a leading provider of public affairs consultancy services in the sector. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please consider giving us a 5-star rating with whichever platform you use. Do follow us on social media channels, including Blue Sky, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Our handle on X is @AllStationsPod.